Lesson 11 is about word problems about equal groups. Now, in this lesson we do have word problems, so we're going to test your reading comprehension as well. Let's go ahead and get started. Our first problem says 42 students can ride on each bus. If there are 12 buses, how many students can ride to the game? Now, I've drawn out our school bus. There's 42 little dots. Each one of those is supposed to represent a student. Now, if we had 12 buses like this, with 42 students in each, we could figure out how many students could ride to the game. For example, if we had 2 buses, that would be a total of 84 students, because 2 times 42 is going to be equal to 84. But we have 12 buses, so let's go ahead and we're going to multiply 42 students per bus times 12 buses to find out what our final answer is going to be. We've got 2 times 2, that's 4. 2 times 4 is 8. We've got a 0 for a placeholder. 1 times 2 is 2. And 1 times 4 is 4. So we add up, we're going to get a 4, a 0, carry our 1, and we've got 504. We've got 504 students can ride to the game. We can use pictures to help us solve problems like this, but it's always going to be a little bit quicker and more efficient to use one of our operations. This time we use multiplication. Make sure you've got this one copied down into your notes. Alright, our next problem. 42 students can ride on each bus, so we've got the same type of bus. Let's go ahead and copy our last bus in here. If there are 1,264 students who want to go to the game, how many buses will be needed? So now this time we know the total number of students, so we could draw out 1,264 dots total, and we need to figure out how many buses that would be required to put all those students into. So what we want to do in this problem is say 1,264. Since we have the opposite information, we're going to do the opposite operation. We're going to do division. 42 students in each bus. So now we can go ahead and solve. We're going to divide 1,264 by 42. So 42 never goes into 12. 42 will go into 126. Let's see how many times. Let's try 42 times 3. 42 times 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 4 is 12. We get a total of 126. That's perfect. So 42 will go into 126 3 times. Got a grand total of 126. We're going to subtract. We've got 0 with 4 left over. Now 42 will go into 4 0 times. So we've got 0. And we've got a 4 left over. So the answer for this problem looks like we have 30 remainder 4. Well, you can't have 4 students that just don't get to go on the bus. We're going to need to have one more bus than we have right here to fit all the students. So how many buses will be needed? 30. Those 4 more people will need one more bus. So we're going to get 30 plus 1. 30 plus 1 is going to have to be equal to 31 buses. And we've got our final answer. We've got to account for those other 4 students who need to be on a bus. If you've got a question, go ahead and watch this again, or write it down for our next class. Let's move on to our next problem. 560 students will be as evenly distributed as possible between 34 buses. How many students will ride on each bus? So in this problem, we're trying to divide students or distribute students as evenly as possible. We're going to have to divide. So 560 divided by 34, and let's see what we get. Well, 34 is going to go into 56 one time. We get 34 with 22, or 220 left over. Now we need to think about how many times 34 is going to go into 220. Well, let's try a number like 6. 34 times 6. 6 times 4, that's going to give us 24. 6 times 3 is 18, plus 2 more gives us 20. We've got 204. Oh, that's going to be correct, because if we added 34 more onto that, we'd be above our number of 220. So we've got 16. We've got 204. We go ahead and we subtract again, and we're going to have, well, we can borrow from the 2. 10 minus 4, that's going to give us 6. 1 minus 0 is 1. Okay, we've got 16 students left over. So we've got an answer of 16 remainder 16. It says how many students will ride on each bus? Well, we can't have 16 on each bus because that means we have 16 left over. So out of our 34 buses, we're going to have 16 buses plus 16 students plus 1 extra student on each of those buses in order to help get everybody on the bus. So let's look at what that would look like. If we have 16 buses with a total of 17 students, that will leave us with 18 buses with 16 students. We can add all these things up to make sure our numbers are correct. 16 plus 18 is our grand total of 34 buses. And if we were to multiply 16 times 17 and add it to 18 times 16, we get our grand total that we had of 560. Okay? And this problem is a little bit tricky because you have to add each one of these remaining 16 students one at a time into the first 16 buses, and we have those 18 left over. Alright, our lesson practice is going to be on page 43. Please come to class with your notes completed and we'll do some more problems like this. I hope you have a nice afternoon.